March 6, 2025. Yonkers, Bronx border. The NYPD drone hovers over marshy terrain where the Sawmill River Parkway meets the Bronx County line. Its camera pans methodically across the reeds and shallow water, searching for anything unusual in this desolate stretch between urban sprawl and wilderness. At 10:17 a.m., the drone operator spots something that doesn't belong, a splash of red against the brown and green landscape. The camera zooms in, revealing the unmistakable shape of a suitcase partially submerged in the marsh. "I've got something," the operator radios to the ground team. "Coordinates sending now." Detective Sarah Morales leads the recovery team through ankle-deep water, approaching the red suitcase with growing dread. It's partially unzipped, whether from a hasty closure or the elements, she can't yet tell. Through the opening, white fabric is visible. When they carefully extract the suitcase from the mud, the full horror becomes clear. Inside is the body of a young woman, still wearing a white blouse and a gold cross necklace. Her face, though discolored from death, is peaceful, at odds with the violence that brought her here. "We found Pamela Alcantara," Detective Morales radios back. "Notify the family." The discovery transforms a missing person case into a homicide investigation, but it answers only one question while raising dozens more. How did a 26-year-old chaplain, a woman dedicated to helping others, beloved in her community, described by all who knew her as gentle and kind, end up murdered and discarded like trash in a marshy grave? The answer begins with 3 words spoken during her final phone call to her mother: "Mom, pray for me." What would you do if someone you knew suddenly disappeared? Would you recognize the warning signs before it was too late? Because in Pamela's case, those warnings were everywhere, if only someone had known how to read them.
The body of a missing 26-year-old woman has been found. It was discovered inside a suitcase along the Sawmill River Parkway in Yonkers. Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim, live at the victim's home in the Fordham Heights section of the Bronx with this disturbing story. Stefan.
Well, Bill, her family had been frantically trying to locate her for days, and sadly, that search is now over. Of course, this is not the way her family had hoped this search would end. Outside her home here in the Bronx, there is a small candlelight vigil. Upstairs, the NYPD has the unit sealed off. They are waiting for a warrant to enter. Law enforcement sources confirm the body of 26-year-old Pamela Alcantara was found at the Bronx-Yonkers border in a red suitcase today by the Sawmill River Parkway. It's unclear at this time who found the body. She was reported missing on Sunday. Her family had plastered missing posters around her neighborhood, around her home here in the Bronx, desperately hoping she would be located. Again, a crime scene now here in the Bronx after her body was found in a suitcase by the Sawmill River Expressway.
Pamela Alcantara's journey began in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, where she was born to a family that valued faith above all else. At age 7, she immigrated with her parents to the Bronx, New York, quickly adapting to her new home while maintaining deep connections to her cultural roots and spiritual upbringing. By her teenage years, Pamela had already shown an unusual capacity for empathy and spiritual guidance. While other adolescents navigated typical teenage concerns, Pamela volunteered at her church, Iglesia Pentecostal, helping with youth programs and community outreach. Even as a teenager, she had this old soul quality, recalled Pastor Miguel Sanchez. People twice her age would seek her counsel. She listened in a way that made you feel truly heard. After completing a certification program with the Latin American Chaplain Association, Pamela became one of the youngest chaplains in the organization's history. Her daily routine revolved around 3 pillars: faith, family, and service. Mornings began with prayer and scripture reading in her small but meticulously kept apartment. By 9 a.m., she would be at the community center or hospital, providing spiritual support to those in crisis. Evenings often found her leading prayer groups or visiting homebound church members. Without fail, each day included a phone call to her mother, a connection so reliable that its absence would later sound the first alarm. Pamela was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, who knew when you had a doctor's appointment and called to check how it went, her cousin Nisa explained. She kept track of everyone else's lives while asking very little for herself. This selflessness extended beyond her official duties. When her grandfather needed daily medication but couldn't afford a home health aide, Pamela rearranged her schedule to visit him twice daily. When her Aunt Isa lost her job, Pamela quietly paid her rent for 3 months until she found new employment. Yet beneath this exterior of boundless giving and serene faith, Pamela harbored the normal desires of a young woman. She dreamed of marriage and children someday. She enjoyed music and dancing at family gatherings. She saved for a trip to visit relatives in the Dominican Republic. These simple aspirations made what happened to her all the more tragic. The woman who helped so many navigate life's difficulties would ultimately be unable to escape the danger in her own home. The hardest part to understand, her mother would later say through tears, is that she spent her life teaching others to seek help, to reach out, to trust in support systems. But when she needed those same things, something held her back until it was almost too late. That something had a name: Junior Perez Diaz. Pamela met Junior Perez Diaz in January 2022 at a Dominican cultural festival in the Bronx. He approached her as she staffed a booth for her church, introducing himself as a 43-year-old business owner who had recently returned to his faith after years of worldly distraction. The 20-year age gap raised immediate concerns among Pamela's family. Her mother later recalled her daughter's defense: "Age is just a number when two souls connect. Besides, older men are more settled, more serious about commitment." This rationalization, that his age represented stability rather than a power imbalance, would be the first of many warning signs misinterpreted through Pamela's lens of optimism and faith. In the beginning, Perez Diaz seemed to validate Pamela's choice. He attended church services with her. He spoke respectfully with her family. He brought her thoughtful gifts: books by her favorite spiritual authors, a new leather-bound Bible with her name embossed on the cover. He listened attentively when she spoke about her chaplain work, expressing admiration for her dedication. He was so charming those first few months, Pamela's Aunt Isa remembered. He would bring food for the whole family when he visited, help my husband with car repairs, offer business advice to Pamela's cousin. He worked hard to win us all over. This charm offensive extended to Pamela's church community as well. Perez Diaz made generous donations to church fundraisers. He volunteered for community service projects. He befriended Pastor Sanchez, often engaging him in deep theological discussions that impressed the spiritual leader. "I was fooled completely," Pastor Sanchez would later admit. He presented himself as a man of genuine faith and character. We all miss the performance aspect of it. 3 months into their relationship, subtle shifts began. Perez Diaz started questioning why Pamela needed to spend so many evenings at church events. He suggested she was overextending herself and needed more rest at his apartment, where he could take care of her. When Pamela received texts during their time together, he would casually ask who was messaging her, his tone light, but his eyes watchful. If she mentioned male colleagues or church members, he would later circle back to these mentions, asking detailed questions about these relationships. It was so gradual, Nisa explained. He framed everything as concern for her well-being or interest in her life. Looking back, we can see he was mapping her relationships, identifying her support system before he began to isolate her from it. By the 6-month mark, Perez Diaz had convinced Pamela to move in with him, arguing that it would save her money and give them more time together. This acceleration of the relationship created the controlled environment he needed for the next phase of his manipulation. The man who had once encouraged Pamela's spiritual calling now complained about her unpredictable schedule. The man who had charmed her family now found reasons why they couldn't host gatherings at his apartment. The man who had impressed her pastor now suggested that some church members were taking advantage of Pamela's generous nature. The foundation was laid. The trap was set. And Pamela, still seeing him through the lens of their early relationship, didn't recognize that the door was already closing behind her. By early 2023, Junior Perez Diaz had established a system of control so comprehensive that Pamela's life bore little resemblance to her former independence. The transformation happened through calculated escalations that isolated her while making her increasingly dependent on him. The digital surveillance began with what seemed like thoughtfulness. "I got us both new phones on my business plan," he told her, presenting the gift as a way to save her money. What he didn't mention was the spyware he'd installed that gave him access to her texts, calls, location, and even microphone. A neighbor later reported overhearing Perez Diaz confronting Pamela about a conversation she'd had with her mother, one he couldn't have known about unless he was monitoring her calls. "Why are you telling your mother our private business?" he demanded. "Don't you trust me to handle our problems?" His monitoring extended beyond her phone. In March 2023, Pamela's cousin Nisa helped her change a flat tire and discovered a small black device magnetically attached under the dashboard. When questioned, Perez-Diaz claimed it was a safety tracker in case the car is stolen. The explanation seemed plausible enough that Pamela accepted it, unaware that it was actually tracking her every movement. Most disturbing were the audio recorders found in their apartment after her death, tiny devices hidden in the bedroom, bathroom, and living room that captured her private moments, prayers, and conversations when Perez-Diaz wasn't home. The financial control tightened simultaneously. He convinced Pamela to close her personal bank account and open a joint account instead. "We're building a future together," he reasoned. This is what committed couples do. With access to her finances, he could monitor every purchase and question any expenditure he hadn't approved. When Pamela received a small raise at work, Perez-Diaz suggested she could reduce her hours. "You work too hard," he said. "Let me take care of you." This seemingly supportive gesture further increased her dependence while reducing her contact with colleagues who might notice the changes in her behavior. The isolation from family happened through subtle manipulation. When her mother called, Perez-Diaz would create distractions or start arguments that Pamela would have to address, cutting phone calls short. He found fault with her cousin Nisa. "She's jealous of our relationship," and her aunt Isa. "She's too judgmental about our age difference." By mid-2023, Pamela's once vibrant social media presence had dwindled to almost nothing. No photos, no updates, no interaction with friends. When family asked about this change, she explained that she was focusing on real relationships, not digital ones. The truth, as they would later discover, was that Perez-Diaz had forbidden her from posting, convinced that any photo might attract another man's attention. The physical intimidation began with small incidents, standing too close during arguments, blocking doorways when she tried to leave a room, punching walls near her head. These demonstrations showed what he was capable of without leaving marks that others might notice. The situation escalated in February 2025 when Pamela confided in her mother about a terrifying incident. During an argument about her attending a women's retreat with her church, Perez-Diaz had held a pillow over her face, applying pressure until she began to struggle for breath. He removed it just as she started to lose consciousness, then immediately shifted to apologies and tears. He said he didn't know what came over him, Pamela told her mother. He begged me to forgive him, said he'd get counseling. This incident became the catalyst for intervention. Pamela's mother, aunt, and cousin recognized the danger had reached a potentially lethal level. They staged what amounted to a family intervention, presenting Pamela with evidence of a relationship's dangerous trajectory and offering a concrete escape plan. "We laid it all out for her," Nisa recalled. "We said, this isn't love, this is control, and it's getting worse." The next time, he might not stop with the pillow. For the first time, Pamela seemed to truly see her situation clearly. She agreed to leave, but the family knew this would be the most dangerous moment of all. The family's escape plan for Pamela was methodical, addressing every aspect of her entanglement with Perez-Diaz. They knew from domestic violence resources that the most dangerous time for victims is when they attempt to leave their abusers, so every detail needed careful consideration. First came the logistical preparations. Pamela's Aunt Isa used her real estate connections to find an apartment on Morris Avenue in the Bronx, a secure building with controlled entry and security cameras. The lease was signed in Isa's name to prevent Perez-Diaz from tracking Pamela through rental applications or credit checks. Nisa purchased a used Honda Civic and registered it in her own name for Pamela to use. "We knew he monitored her finances, so we couldn't have her name on anything that might tip him off," Nisa explained. The car gave Pamela transportation independence without creating a paper trail. The timing was strategically planned around Perez-Diaz's schedule. He had mentioned a business trip to Philadelphia scheduled for February 27th to 28th, 2025, providing a narrow window for Pamela to move her essential belongings without confrontation. "We created a detailed inventory of what she needed to take versus what she could leave behind," her mother recalled. Important documents, irreplaceable mementos, enough clothing to start over, but nothing so obvious that he would immediately notice items missing when he returned. The family also helped Pamela begin the legal protection process. They connected her with a domestic violence advocate who helped her document the abuse and prepared a file for a restraining order once she was safely relocated. The advocate explained that Pamela should wait until she was established in her new location before filing, as the legal notification would alert Perez-Diaz to her actions. Financial independence was another crucial element. Pamela's grandfather withdrew $3,000 in cash from his savings, money that wouldn't appear on any bank statement Perez-Diaz could access. This would sustain her until she could open a new bank account and redirect her paycheck deposits. The most challenging aspect was maintaining normalcy during the planning phase. Pamela had to continue her regular routines, showing no signs of her impending departure. She attended work, maintained her chaplain duties, and interacted with Perez Diaz as usual, all while preparing for her escape. Those weeks of planning were the hardest, her mother later said. Every time she left our house to go back to him, I was terrified it would be the last time I saw her. We were racing against time. On February 28, 2025, while Perez Diaz was supposedly in Philadelphia, the plan was executed. Pamela's uncle arrived with a van, and within 3 hours, her essential belongings were moved to the new apartment on Morris Avenue. Family members helped her set up the space, install new locks, and program emergency contacts into her new phone. That evening, in her new apartment, Pamela experienced her first night of freedom in nearly 3 years. She called her mother, sounding lighter than she had in months. "I can breathe here," she said. "I feel like myself again." The following day, Pamela began establishing her new routine. She went grocery shopping, explored her neighborhood, and attended a meeting with her chaplain supervisor to explain her situation and request temporary reassignment to duties away from areas Perez Diaz might frequent. On Saturday, March 1, 2025, Pamela spent the day with her family, finalizing plans to file for the restraining order on Monday morning. She seemed cautiously optimistic, making plans for the future and even laughing, a sound her family had almost forgotten. That evening, she returned to her new apartment to prepare for Sunday church service. At 9:47 p.m., she called her mother for their daily check-in. The conversation was brief, but would later haunt her family. Pamela seemed suddenly anxious, though she wouldn't explain why. "Mom, pray for me," she said before hanging up. These would be the last words her mother ever heard from her. What Pamela didn't share, perhaps to protect her mother from worry, was that she had received a text from an unknown number earlier that evening. "I know where you are." Sunday, March 2, 2025, began with an absence that immediately triggered concern throughout Pamela's community. For the first time in years, her seat at the 10 a.m. service at Iglesia Pentecostal remained empty. "When Pamela didn't show up, we knew something was wrong," Pastor Sanchez later told investigators. This wasn't a woman who simply forgot church. This was a woman whose life revolved around her faith. By noon, text messages and calls to Pamela's new phone went unanswered. Her mother, who had spoken with her daughter just the night before, immediately sensed danger. She contacted NISA and ISA, who agreed to check Pamela's apartment. They arrived at the Morris Avenue building around 1:30 p.m., using the spare key Pamela had given them for emergencies. What they found inside apartment 3 sent a chill through both women. Pamela's purse was on the floor, its contents scattered. Her phone and keys lay on the coffee table. The blanket on her couch was askew, as though disturbed in a struggle. Most telling was the bathroom. The shower curtain had been partially torn from its rings, and a small smear of what appeared to be blood marked the tile wall. "We need to call the police right now," NISA told her mother, already dialing 911. Officers from the 44th Precinct responded to the missing person report, but their initial assessment lacked urgency. Pamela was an adult who had been missing less than 24 hours. There were signs of a disturbance, but no definitive evidence of a crime. The responding officers took a report and advised the family that the detective division would follow up. Unwilling to wait for the bureaucratic process, Pamela's family launched their own search efforts. By Sunday evening, they had created flyers with Pamela's photo and contact information. By Monday morning, these flyers covered the neighborhood, plastered on light poles, bus stops, and community bulletin boards. The family also reached out to Pamela's church community, mobilizing dozens of volunteers to canvass the area. They split into teams, systematically checking local hospitals, shelters, and businesses, showing Pamela's photo and asking if anyone had seen her. "We knew time was critical," her grandfather explained. "We couldn't wait for the police to take it seriously." Their persistence paid off when a detective from a missing persons squad, Marcus Rivera, took a personal interest in the case. After interviewing the family on Monday afternoon and learning about Pamela's history with Perez Diaz, Detective Rivera elevated the case priority. "This isn't a typical missing adult," he noted in his case file. "The history of domestic violence, the signs of struggle in the apartment, and the victim's reliable patterns of behavior all suggest foul play." Rivera's first investigative step was to review security footage from Pamela's apartment building. The cameras captured her entering the building at 11:23 p.m. on Saturday, March 1st, carrying grocery bags. She appeared normal, if slightly hurried, checking her phone before entering the elevator. More significantly, the footage never showed her leaving the building. The cameras did, however, capture another person of interest. At 12:17 a.m. on Sunday, March 2nd, a man wearing a baseball cap and surgical mask, common COVID-era accessories that conveniently obscured his face, entered the building by following another resident through the security door. The man kept his head down, avoiding direct view of the cameras, but his build and gait were consistent with Junior Perez Diaz. At 4:07 a.m., the same cameras recorded a man struggling with a large red suitcase in the elevator and then through the parking garage. Though his face remained partially obscured, the distinctive watch visible on his wrist would later be identified as matching one owned by Perez Diaz. With this footage in hand, Detective Rivera obtained Perez Diaz's cell phone records through an emergency disclosure request. The data revealed that his phone had pinged from towers near Pamela's new apartment between midnight and 4:30 a.m. on March 2nd, directly contradicting his initial claim to police that he had been home all night. By Tuesday, March 4th, the investigation had shifted from a missing person case to a suspected homicide. Police executed a search warrant at Perez Diaz's apartment, where they discovered a receipt for a red Samsonite suitcase purchased just 2 days earlier. They also found a small notebook containing what appeared to be surveillance notes on Pamela's movements, including the address of her new apartment. Most damning was a hidden compartment in his closet containing the audio recording devices that had been removed from their previous shared home, physical evidence of the controlling behavior Pamela's family had described. Despite mounting evidence, Perez Diaz maintained his innocence when brought in for questioning. He claimed he hadn't seen Pamela since she abandoned their relationship without explanation. When confronted with the cell tower data placing him near her apartment, he changed his story, admitting he had driven by just to talk to her, but insisted she wasn't home when he arrived. As the investigation intensified, the family's worst fears were realized on Thursday, March 6th, when the NYPD drone unit discovered the red suitcase in the marshy area near the Sawmill River Parkway. Inside was Pamela Alcantara's body, still wearing the white blouse and jeans she had last been seen in, along with the cross necklace her mother had given her years before. The search for Pamela was over. The search for justice had just begun. The medical examiner's report, completed on March 7, 2025, provided the clinical details of Pamela's final moments. The cause of death was determined to be homicidal asphyxiation, manual strangulation with sufficient force to fracture the hyoid bone in her neck. Based on body temperature and decomposition factors, the time of death was estimated between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m. on Sunday, March 2nd. But the sterile language of forensic pathology couldn't capture the human reality of what occurred in apartment 3B that night. Through physical evidence, digital records, and Perez Diaz's eventual partial admissions, investigators reconstructed Pamela's final hours. After her last call with her mother at 9:47 p.m. on Saturday, Pamela received the threatening text from an unknown number, "I know where you are." Though she never responded to the message, her internet search history showed she looked up Emergency Restraining Order Weekend at 10:12 p.m., suggesting she recognized the danger. Security footage showed her checking her peephole multiple times between 11 p.m. and midnight, indicating she was anxious about someone's arrival. At 12:17 a.m., Perez Diaz entered the building by slipping in behind another resident, a tactic that bypassed the security intercom system that would have alerted Pamela to his presence. Neighbors in adjacent apartments later reported hearing a knock at approximately 12:20 a.m., followed by a woman's voice saying, "What are you doing here?" The male voice that responded was too low to make out clearly. What happened next was pieced together from physical evidence in the apartment. The confrontation began in the living room, where Pamela's phone was found still open to a text draft to her cousin that read only "he's he," presumably "he's here," cut off mid-typing. The struggle moved to the bathroom, where the shower curtain was partially torn down. Forensic testing revealed Pamela's palm print on the bathroom mirror, positioned as though she had been pushed against it. A small amount of her blood was found on the tile wall, consistent with a minor injury during the struggle. The fatal confrontation occurred back in the living room. Fibers from the carpet were found embedded in Pamela's fingernails, suggesting she had fallen or been pushed to the floor. The pattern of bruising on her neck indicated she had been strangled from a front, her attacker likely kneeling over her. The medical examiner noted defensive wounds on Pamela's hands and forearms, showing she had fought for her life. DNA recovered from beneath her fingernails would later be matched to Perez Diaz, providing crucial physical evidence linking him directly to the murder. What made the crime particularly disturbing was the calculated behavior that followed. Rather than acting in panic or remorse, Perez Diaz methodically cleaned the apartment, wiping down surfaces and removing obvious signs of struggle. He wrapped Pamela's body in a shower curtain as a temporary measure before retrieving the red suitcase he had purchased 2 days earlier from his car. This premeditated purchase of the suitcase suggested planning rather than a crime of passion, a detail prosecutors would later emphasize to establish first-degree murder charges. Between approximately 2:30 and 4 a.m., Perez Diaz packed Pamela's body into the suitcase, a task that required significant physical effort given her height of 5 feet 6 inches. The security footage showing him struggling with the suitcase in the elevator at 4:07 a.m. captured the physical strain of this macabre task. Throughout this entire process, cell tower data showed Perez Diaz's phone remained at the apartment location, with no outgoing calls or texts, suggesting focused attention on the cleanup and concealment efforts. By 4:15 a.m., he had loaded the suitcase into his car and begun the drive toward the Sawmill River Parkway. License plate readers captured his vehicle at 4:43 a.m. traveling north, then again at 5:21 a.m. heading south, the round trip to dispose of Pamela's body. The location he chose for disposal wasn't random. The marshy area was known to local police as a spot where illegal dumping occasionally occurred, where the red suitcase might blend with other discarded items. The area was also difficult to access on foot, reducing the chance of accidental discovery by passers-by. After disposing of Pamela's body, Perez Diaz returned to his own apartment, showered, and changed clothes. At 8:17 a.m., just hours after the murder, he began creating his alibi by calling Pamela's phone multiple times and leaving concerned voicemails. "Hey, just checking on you. Call me back when you get this." He also texted her, "Are you okay? Haven't heard from you." These communications, intended to establish his supposed ignorance of her fate, would later become evidence of his calculated deception. By Sunday evening, when Pamela's family had begun searching for her, Perez Diaz joined their efforts, an act of breathtaking audacity. He appeared at her mother's home, expressing concern and offering to help distribute flyers. He even suggested places to search, carefully directing attention away from the Sawmill River Parkway area. "He stood in my living room, pretending to be worried about my daughter, while knowing exactly what he had done to her," Pamela's mother would later testify. "I can never erase that memory." The investigation accelerated dramatically after the discovery of Pamela's body on March 6th. With physical evidence now secured, detectives could build a comprehensive case against Junior Perez Diaz. The autopsy findings provided crucial timeline confirmation. The medical examiner determined that Pamela had died approximately 16 to 20 hours before her body was placed in the marshy area, aligning perfectly with the security footage and cell tower data, placing Perez Diaz at her apartment during the critical window. Forensic analysis of the red suitcase yielded multiple evidence points. The suitcase matched the exact model purchased by Perez Diaz 2 days before the murder, confirmed through the serial number still attached to its interior. Fibers from the suitcase lining were found on Pamela's clothing, and conversely, fibers from her clothing were embedded in the suitcase material. Most damning was the DNA evidence. Despite his cleanup efforts, Perez Diaz left biological traces throughout the crime scene. His DNA was found under Pamela's fingernails from her defensive wounds. A single hair matching his DNA profile was recovered from the shower curtain used to initially wrap her body. Sweat residue on the suitcase handle contained his DNA, placing him in direct contact with the murder's key evidence. Digital forensics provided another layer of incriminating evidence. When investigators examined Perez Diaz's phone, they discovered he had used an app called Text Now to send the threatening "I know where you are" message from a virtual number. The app had been deleted, but digital forensics recovered its usage data from the phone's cache. His internet search history revealed queries that further suggested premeditation. February 25th, how to find someone who moved. February 26th, largest suitcase dimensions. February 27th, areas without security cameras, Bronx. March 2nd, how long before missing person is reported. March 3rd, how to permanently delete text messages. The license plate readers that had initially placed his vehicle near the disposal site provided crucial timeline evidence. When combined with cell tower data Investigators could track his movements with remarkable precision throughout the entire crime, from his arrival at Pamela's apartment to the body disposal and his return home. Perhaps the most unexpected breakthrough came from Perez Diaz's own vehicle. His car, 2023 Tesla Model 3, had an active cabin camera that automatically recorded short clips when the vehicle detected unusual movement. Though he had attempted to delete these recordings, Tesla's cloud backup retained fragments showing him placing the red suitcase in his trunk at 4:12 a.m. on March 2nd. With this mountain of evidence, detectives obtained an arrest warrant on March 7, 2025. Perez Diaz was taken into custody at his workplace, a moment captured by security cameras that showed his expression of shock, not the shock of an innocent man, but of someone who believed he had covered his tracks. During initial questioning, Perez Diaz offered an explanation that investigators described as delusional in its implausibility. He claimed Pamela had left the apartment voluntarily around 1 a.m., wearing pajamas and carrying the red suitcase herself. When asked why she would leave in the middle of the night with luggage, but without her phone, keys, or wallet, he had no answer. Confronted with the DNA evidence and digital timeline, Perez Diaz's story evolved. He admitted being at her apartment, but claimed her death was accidental, that she had fallen during an argument and hit her head. This explanation contradicted the medical examiner's findings of manual strangulation. When presented with the evidence of the threatening text and suitcase purchase before the murder, Perez Diaz requested an attorney and refused further questioning. He was charged with second-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter, and 2 counts of kidnapping, charges that could result in 25 years to life in prison if convicted. The arrest brought a measure of relief to Pamela's family, but it couldn't erase the horror of what had happened or answer the most haunting question: how had Perez Diaz discovered Pamela's new address? The investigation revealed that despite the family's careful planning, they had overlooked one critical vulnerability. Pamela had used her regular email address to set up utilities at the new apartment. Perez Diaz, who had previously installed spyware on her devices, still had access to her email account. A confirmation message from the electric company containing her new address had appeared in her inbox on February 28th, the very day she moved in. This digital oversight, so easy to make in our connected world, had created the fatal breach in Pamela's security that ultimately led to her death. Pamela Alcantara's funeral at Iglesia Pentecostal on March 15, 2025, drew over 500 mourners, family members, church congregants, community leaders, and domestic violence advocates. Her white casket was surrounded by lilies, her favorite flower, and photos showing her radiant smile. Pamela lived to serve others, Pastor Sanchez said during the service. She counseled those in spiritual crisis. She prayed with the sick. She brought comfort to the grieving. And now, even in death, she is teaching us to recognize the signs of abuse, to speak up when we see someone suffering, to act before it's too late. Pamela's mother, standing before the congregation with remarkable strength, delivered a message that transcended her personal grief. My daughter's voice was silenced, but mine will not be. If you are in a relationship where you are controlled, where you are afraid, where your spirit is being crushed, get out now. Pamela tried to leave, but she waited too long. Don't make her mistake. In the months following Pamela's death, her story catalyzed change throughout the Bronx and beyond. The Latin American Chaplain Association established the Pamela Alcantara Fund to help women escape abusive relationships. The fund provides emergency housing, transportation, legal assistance, and technology security, addressing the very barriers Pamela had faced in her own escape attempt. Local police precincts implemented enhanced training for officers responding to domestic disturbance calls, with specific protocols for technology-facilitated abuse. The program, called Pamela's Protocol, trains officers to recognize digital surveillance and coercive control as forms of domestic violence requiring immediate intervention. Community centers throughout New York City hosted workshops on recognizing the warning signs of relationship abuse, with particular emphasis on the digital dimension that had played such a crucial role in Pamela's case. These sessions teach participants how to identify spyware, secure their devices, and create technology-safe escape plans. Pamela's cousin Nisa emerged as a powerful advocate, speaking at schools and churches about the insidious nature of coercive control. Abuse doesn't always leave visible bruises, she tells audiences. Sometimes it leaves invisible chains. Pamela was planning her escape, but she didn't recognize how dangerous that moment of leaving truly was. The red suitcase that contained Pamela's body has become a powerful symbol in domestic violence prevention campaigns throughout New York City. Billboards and posters show the image of a red suitcase with the words, "Don't wait until it's too late." Recognize the warning signs. Those warning signs were abundant in Pamela's relationship with Perez Diaz. Isolation from friends and family, monitoring of communications and movements, restrictions on social media and self-expression, age disparity creating a power imbalance, escalating jealousy and accusations, threats of self-harm if she left, previous incidents of physical intimidation. Any one of these signs should raise concern. Together, they create a pattern that too often ends in tragedy. As Junior Perez Diaz awaits trial, scheduled for early 2026, Pamela's legacy continues to grow. The chapel at Iglesia Pentecostal has been renamed in her honor. A scholarship fund helps young women from the Dominican community pursue education in counseling and social work. Her story is taught in domestic violence prevention programs throughout New York City. Pamela's life mattered, her mother told a gathering on the anniversary of her death. Her death must matter too. If even one person recognizes the danger they're in and gets help because of Pamela's story, then my daughter's spirit continues her work. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, reports a surge in calls mentioning Pamela's case, suggesting her story is already saving lives. Each call represents someone who recognized their own situation in Pamela's story and reached out before it was too late. In the Bronx neighborhood where she lived and served, Pamela is remembered not as a victim, but as a teacher whose final lesson may be her most important, that love should never hurt, control is not care, and no one deserves to live in fear. What warning signs do you think are most commonly missed in abusive relationships? Share your thoughts below. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and remember, recognizing these patterns could save someone's life.